What's up, gentlemen? This is Rising Phoenix Podcast, a podcast about how to rise up after your divorce. I'm your host, Michael Rhodes. Let's get into it. Joining me today is Mr. David Kunkel. David, let's jump right into it. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
I have been a psychologist here in Pennsylvania for over 30 years. Most of that time I spent at one of the big health systems here in the area, working at their different outpatient therapy sites where I was an outpatient therapist. And I saw people who had all different kinds of issues, depression, anxiety, trauma. I did some substance abuse, you name it. Then in 2004, when I was still there, I decided to start an anger management group. And it must have really filled a need because it took off. And I've been doing it ever since. I left that job about 3.5 years ago now, but I brought the anger program with me. I continue to see people for a variety of issues, but anger, both the group and individually, continues to be one of my focuses.
Yeah, and I want to jump right into that, but let's tell the world that you are indeed my therapist, right? So
I am, yes.
So you could tell the world either how fucked up I am or how wonderful, or maybe both.
That sounds like a potential HIPAA violation. You'll have to let them know that.
Good point. So I'm curious in terms of the people you see, being anger, is it mostly men or no?
Yes. My program has never been limited to just men, but I'll bet probably 95% of the people that I've seen over the years have been men.
Yeah. Well,
although some of the women that I have seen have quite a temper.
Really?
Some of the women I've seen have been worse than many of the guys.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's always exceptions to the rule, right? I mean, yeah. So, well, let's jump in and define anger. How do you define it? And I don't mean just like, oh, being mad. I mean, the surface level definition too. But what does it mean? What else does it mean? What else does it tell you about a person?
Anger is one of our core emotions. It's one of the natural emotions that we're all born with. Depending on who you read, we're all born with anywhere from 5 to 7 or 8 different emotions, things like happiness and sadness and fear and anger. And anger is one of those. It's one of our more complex emotions. When somebody gets angry, there are things going on in the brain, things going on in your body. It changes your thinking. It, of course, affects your behavior. It's a full body emotion that is often triggered by perceiving a threat of some kind. Maybe it's a threat to my person or to a loved one. Maybe it's a threat to my property. Probably more often these days, when people get angry, it's a threat to their pride or their ego or their sense of right or wrong or fairness, that kind of thing.
Yeah. What is the primary purpose then? To a protection?
That is a big purpose of it. Yeah. Protection. From back in caveman days, when that fight or flight response gets kicked in, you either experience anger or you experience anxiety. Often that depends on how big the threat is, right? Or how if the threat is big, maybe it's more fear and anxiety that you feel. But in terms of what happens with the fight or flight response and in your body, it's essentially the same thing. So yeah, protection is a big one. Anger is a good motivator. Not all anger is bad, right? The goal of anger management is to never be angry again. That would just be impossible. The goal is to get rid of the problem anger.
And how do you define like good anger versus bad? I mean, obviously, destroying shit or whatever, but like, how do you define it? Like, what's good anger versus what's bad
anger? when we're trying to see if somebody has an anger problem, one of the things you do is you just look at what the consequences have been in their life of their anger, right? Is it having a negative effect on your relationships, on your employment, on your finances? I've seen guys who have, had to fix drywall or buy a new big screen TV because they smashed the last one. So it can get expensive. So what are the consequences? We usually look at like 3 different areas to determine if somebody's got a problem. We look at the intensity of the anger. You want your anger to be kind of in proportion to the situation. And if somebody's making a mountain out of a molehill and blowing away up, that's indicative of a problem. So that's one area. Frequency of anger. Some people don't get angry often, but when they get angry, you know it. Maybe there are problems that are a result. And then there are other people at the other end who are getting angry about all sorts of things every day. They've got a lot of triggers.
Yeah.
So frequency, intensity, and then the third area that we talk about is duration. And that too, like frequency can kind of be a problem at either end of the spectrum. There are some people who will blow, they'll get it off their chest, they feel better, but the people around them aren't necessarily feeling better.
Right.
It's like a tornado blowing through a town, the damage that is left behind.
Sure.
So it might be very brief, but it doesn't mean it's not a problem. And then there are other people at the other end whose duration is very long. They might be holding on to things that happened years and years ago, and harboring that resentment and those grudges, and that's not very healthy either.
Yeah. I wonder, I don't want to like put words in your mouth, but I always kind of view anger, at least a lot of anger, is it masking a real problem, and typically that is the inability to really feel the hurt of something. Especially we were talking about like grudges and things of that nature, right? How often do you see guys where that's the case, where they just need to get underneath the anger and go cry a lot to really clear that, and that will clear the anger? Like, how common is that? How much of what you see is that, in fact, guys just need to kind of get to the pain of things?
That's very common. They used to say that anger was like a secondary emotion and that there was some primary emotion that was underneath it. That's not quite accurate because, like I said earlier, anger is one of our core emotions. It's not that it's a secondary emotion, but it's probably more accurate to say that, what is the saying? Anger seldom rides alone. That there are, maybe you're genuinely feeling angry, but that's probably not all you're feeling. There are these other emotions that are mixed in there. But anger feels better, than those other ones. So guys tend to use anger as the default. That's sort of something that we learned from little on up, right? That guys are allowed to feel anger and lust, pretty much, and any other emotion is a no-no.
Yeah.
So it's easy to sort of push that other stuff to the side. But you're right. If somebody's going to get to the heart of what's going on, you got to get to the point where you can admit some of that other stuff, right? The loss, the sadness, maybe the guilt. Some of that anger might be really at yourself, but it's easier to be angry at somebody else.
And guys that have had success, how much of it is, well, what is success? How do you define success for someone that goes through an anger management program?
That's a good question. They are angry much less frequently. And when they do get angry, they handle it in a much more effective way. They just are able to get to the point where the out of control problem anger that was disrupting their lives in some way just doesn't happen anymore. Or if it does happen, it's very infrequent.
And how do you get to that? Like, what are the progressions and steps that typically allow for a good outcome?
First and foremost, they got to want it.
Yeah.
You know, angry people tend to blame the world and other people for why they're angry. You know, if only she would stop doing X, Y, or Z, or if only my kids would listen to me, then I wouldn't have to yell at them, you know, and if only my boss would not give me all the crap jobs, you know, and then I'd be happier at work. So they got to get to the point where they accept responsibility, and some do and some don't.
Yeah.
So if they don't, they're probably not going to benefit a whole lot.
Yeah.
But for those that do, for those that are able to sort of look at it, a big step is being able to identify what are the buttons that are getting pushed, what are the things that you're saying to yourself and thinking to yourself that are contributing to the anger. It's probably important too to distinguish between people who have a good reason to be angry, you know, and maybe they're going through a divorce or whatever, right? And they've not had really anger issues prior to that, and they're angry because of what's happening in their lives right now. You know, I'm angry because of the divorce versus I'm going through a divorce because I'm angry, right? Is the anger a byproduct of the divorce that I'm going through and all that entails, or is the divorce a byproduct of my years of anger and the wife just decided she's not going to put up with it anymore?
Yeah. So I mean, like all of these things, there's a couple things that always sort of come up in these conversations, and one of those is taking ownership regardless of what happened, right? And then being mindful of where you're at, and noticing and listening to yourself and what understanding yourself. These things are, I think they're key and important to just mental health in general, right?
Yep. Yep.
And in terms of like how many people have gone through your like how, if you had to put a number, like how many men that go through it in particular come out of the other side pretty successful and managing their anger?
I don't, a percentage.
Yeah, just a guess.
Probably 3/4 of them, I bet, are doing better. It's been a lot of guys over the years, you know. 2004 is when I started it. So, and it's the group that I do is like 10 sessions. It's 10 weeks long. So, and I would do that throughout the year. I would do it for 10 weeks and then take a couple of weeks off and then do it for another 10. So there's maybe 4 groups or so per year that I would get in. And
I feel a rabbit hole coming up. How difficult is it to be in that space in a consistent basis? Like I got to imagine there's got to be, because you don't seem like an angry guy. I mean, we've never hung out outside of, you know, our professional relationship, but there's got to be a part. I don't want to put you on the spot, but for me, I would think that there will be a part of me going, come on, man, like fucking relax already, would you? Like, so like, how difficult is it to be in that consistent space of angry men in general, but people?
That's what a lot of people thought when I first decided I was going to start doing this. You know, why would you want to put yourself in this room full of angry people?
Yeah.
And there have been the occasional guy that creates a problem over the years, but you know, the great majority of them usually have some apprehension when they first come. Most guys have never done anything like this before. Most guys have not been in therapy, let alone in a group of other guys where I'm supposed to talk about what's going on in my life and all that. So they often come in with a bit of apprehension, but by the end, what a lot of them have found is that they really like it, you know, and many of them are pretty motivated. You know, there's some guys who've been through the group who are there because of court, or somebody was requiring them to do it. Even some of them know it's a problem and they want to do something about it. There are others who are just kind of going through the motions, but I tried my best to sort of sort through them, screen those people, and not bring them in, offer them something different. But it's not like the group is full of people throwing chairs and cussing each other out and everything. Right. It's more of a, I think there's real value to men, for men to be able to have other men that they can talk to. And I know that's a big thing of what you offer.
Yep.
And often this group is a first experience of that for these guys. I've had groups that have bonded so well that they've exchanged phone numbers.
That's awesome.
I'll come out in the parking lot and they'll still be out talking to each other. They still keep in contact. They make friends. And guys as a rule kind of lack that, and I think it's important for us.
Yeah, no, I wholeheartedly agree. All right, so I think next we'll shift to like, what do we do? We're angry. Maybe, and I'm thinking of a member, a friend, Pete, and Pete has to write an alimony check every month, and it fucking pisses Pete off. So let's say you're Pete and you're writing that check and you're like, that fucking, what do you do in that? And let's say maybe it escalates, maybe he starts banging shit around. I'm not saying Pete does this, Pete. I'm not saying you do that. But let's say he gets to that point. He's throwing shit. He's like, fuck this. What does he do in that moment to help deal with his anger?
Well, not knowing Pete, I would say
he's a wonderful guy. He's a Bengals fan. That's his only downfall.
Oh, okay. There's the dealing with it in the moment, right? Yes. Things that you can do to deal with that anger that rises in the moment. And then maybe there's the underlying stuff that sort of leads to that moment. So yes. A big part of dealing with it in the moment. Now, if he's writing child support checks or whatever, he's probably by himself and not across from anybody. But yes. A big part of dealing with it in the moment is anytime you can put a pause between when something happens and when you react to it, the better, right? Now, maybe this applies more to, a face-to-face interaction or something you're having with somebody, but usually when that space between the trigger and your reaction is very short, if it's like that, usually it's not good, usually that's when bad things happen. But if you can put a little pause in there, a little space, it at least gives you 5 seconds maybe to think it through a little bit, or to take a breath, or to do something so you don't just sort of impulsively have that reaction. The other big part, well, there are lots of big parts, but one of the strategies in helping people with their anger is to help them to think about their thinking and pay more attention to that self-talk, right? What are the buttons that are getting pushed? What is it that he's saying to himself every time he has to write one of those checks, right? And he's probably saying things like how unfair this is, and I can't believe it, and she's trying to take me for everything. And, there's this negative stuff that's going around in there.
Yep.
And like I said earlier, all anger is not bad, but you want to make sure that if you're feeling angry, you're responding to the facts of the situation and you're not letting this blow it out of proportion or take it personally or whatever, right? So you need to, like I said, think about that thinking. How's he looking at it? And then decide whether those thoughts are true, not true, helpful, not helpful. Is getting pissed about it going to change anything? How would he need to think about it differently? I mean, that sounds like that's probably one of those situations that's never going to be fun, right? I mean, you're never going to look forward to doing that.
No.
But it's also probably one of those situations that isn't going to go away, right? At least until his kids turn 18.
Right.
So, so back to the ownership, is this something that I want to let spoil my day or spoil a few hours of my day every month when I have to write this check?
Yeah.
Or am I not? In some ways, it's still given that power and control to the X.
Yeah.
And just thinking about it in that way can sometimes motivate people to make a shift, Screw that. I'm not going to let her, ruin my day.
Yeah, it really is about being mindful. It's not, there's no quick fix, right? These things take time, right? To sort of wrap your head around it, to look at it in a different way, to understand why and all these things. There's no like, oh, I get, there's no, in my view, there's no like enlightened, like, oh, like you just see it. You're like, oh, I see it now. And I just don't think it's that way, right? I think it's a process, right?
Right. Yeah. And guys, as a rule, don't like that, right? We tend to be problem solvers. We like to get in there, fix it, get her done, move on, and especially with people who have had anger problems for years, right? Versus the guy who's just angry because of the stuff that's going on in my life now with this divorce.
Right.
If I've had a history of anger problems, that's not going to just go away tomorrow. It can definitely go away and it can definitely get better. How we deal with anger is something that's largely a learned thing, right? You learn it from growing up and from society and all of that. So the good news there is if you learned it, you can unlearn it, but probably not by tomorrow. It's going to take some persistence and dedication, but guys do it all the time.
Guys that you have seen have the most success, have they also branched off and done their own personal therapy to get to the heart of some of the matters?
Some do. Yeah, some do. I mean, certainly some guys are much more motivated, right? They'll ask me, is there a book I can read or is there things I can be doing? In my group, I'll give homework assignments for in between, and the ones that take the time to do those assignments and you can tell, put some thought into it, they're the ones that do well. So it all comes back to just motivation, is this something you want to change or you just, going through the motions and showing your wife I'm doing this just to get her off my back or just to satisfy the court or right. With it, like with everything.
Yeah. So speaking of books, are there books you would recommend for guys that are dealing with an anger issue?
Well, I have a whole list.
Oh, really?
I give the guys, if you jump on Amazon and you search on anger management, you're going to get pages and pages.
Yeah.
One that I often recommend to guys is a book called Beyond Anger, written by a guy named Thomas Harbin. I like that book. It's one that I probably go back to and reread every year or so. I like that because a lot of the anger management books will talk about techniques or in the moment strategies and stuff to deal with your anger, and that's all well and good. All of that has its place,
right?
But for a lot of guys, you need to go a little bit deeper than that, right? And sort of look at what's inside of here that explains why I get so angry in the first place. And he does that some in this book, so that's why I like that. But there are plenty of others as well.
Yeah, I would assume that there probably would have been one that you sort of lean on, and I'll check it out. I have my moments, as you know, of anger, particularly around the divorce situation, but sometimes in general, I lean on it. I find myself being more angry, or it's more irritable when life doesn't give me the space, as it often does, to sleep, to not have things come up. I get overwhelmed, and that causes me to be irritable and angry. Is that, I mean, that's probably pretty common, right?
Yeah. And one way to think about anger too is that anger will often point to a problem that needs to be solved, right? It kind of lets us know that something's not right. But most angry people don't look at it as a problem to be solved. They look at it as, here we go again, just something to stay pissed off about and just kind of ruminate about and dwell on and how it's not right, da 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 da. Instead of kind of taking a step back and saying, all right, what's the problem? What's the problem that needs to be solved here? And sort of channel that. Guys, as a rule, like I said before, are really good at solving problems. They probably do it very well with their jobs or whatever. Sometimes I'll say to the guys in the group when we're talking about this, if you walked out to the parking lot tonight and your car didn't start, that would be a problem, right? Maybe it would make you angry, but it also, getting angry isn't going to get you home either, right? So what would you do, right? And there's a problem solving strategy that can sometimes help, and that involves defining what the problem is. My car's not starting. Brainstorming some possible solutions, gas, battery, whatever. Picking one of those, trying it. Does it work? Great. If it doesn't, try another one. And and guys do this sort of naturally. You don't think about those steps necessarily when you're doing your job or whatever.
Right.
But the same sort of strategy can really help in your personal life. So if you're going through a phase in life where you're just feeling irritable and cranky because you got so much stuff going on, maybe that's your body's way of kind of telling you to take a step back and say, all right, what needs fixed here? What is within my ability to fix? And then fix it. Lots of times you can fix the things that are triggering your anger, and then you don't get angry about it anymore.
Yeah. I'm curious, and it probably isn't a fair question, but I'm curious about some of the more, because being guys, right? They want to know, all right, how long is this going to take? Like, how long can I fit? What do I got to put in to fix my anger? And so, again, probably not a fair question. And you can look at maybe extremes or averages or whatever, just in your own head, in your own experience. What does it take from a guy who is angry? Maybe that's who he is. He's an angry dude. How long does it take him to typically go through to the program? Like, is the 10-week program sufficient enough? Do they go through it multiple times? Like, again, being guys, we want to know, how long is this? What do I got to do to what's my investment here? What do you see typically?
Well, they're not cured after the 10-week group, right? And we talk about that day one, that when we get to week 10, it's not like this is never going to come up for you again, but they leave that with new ideas and new tools and new skills that they are hopefully then going to carry on with them. If somebody's had anger problems since they've been a kid or a teenager or whatever, it's probably something they're going to have to sort of deal with for most of their life, not in the same way that they're dealing with it initially, right? But it's not that those old ways of thinking are never going to pop back in your head again. Most of the guys, though, see a definite improvement after the 8 or 10 weeks. And it's really nice too, because the ones that are married will say, my wife has said to me, I seem better, and it's always good, to hear somebody acknowledge that you're changing, right? Or a situation will come up that they've historically, flipped out over, that's been a button for them, and it happens again, and they deal with it in a different way, so those little successes just kind of reinforce wanting to keep working on
it. Motivation, right? I mean, it kind of comes down to that. Do you really want to change?
Yes, we are creatures of habit, and anger can definitely be a habit, but habits are meant to be broken or replaced with healthier habits.
Yeah. Is that part of the strategy? I would guess, like replacing, like, okay, instead of getting, or when I get angry, instead of flipping out, I do this. Is that a part of the approach as well?
Sometimes, yeah. There might be, we talk about timeouts sometimes, and as silly as that might sound, you think when you think about timeouts, you often think about disciplining your kids and stuff. But
Yeah.
when somebody's got an anger problem, it can come on quickly. Often people will feel like they go from 0 to 60.
Yes.
And if you're at 60, we didn't really talk much about the fight or flight response yet, but that fight or flight response that we all have is well engaged by then, right? And when you are in that mode, your brain's not really working right. You're in survival mode at that point. You're not in problem solving mode, or how do I best communicate this mode, or
Right.
anything. So sometimes that initial first strategy is to do some things to bring you down a couple of notches.
Yeah.
Many guys have had the experience of blowing up about something, and then an hour passes, or a couple hours pass, and they've calmed down, and they look back on it and they say, what was I doing? Why did I act like that? That's because in that moment when you were angry, you were operating on adrenaline and cortisol and all that, right? And you're not thinking clearly in them when you're like that. But when your body has had a chance to calm down and relax, logical, rational thought kicks back in.
Yeah.
You're able to kind of see that maybe I overdid it there a little bit.
Yeah, let's dive into that if you don't mind, because that kind of shit fascinates me. So it is a biological, physiological response, right? You're angry and there's shit going on in your body and your head and your brain and your nervous system, right? Can you speak to that? Can we talk about like what occurs then, and what does it do to you in terms of limiting your ability to behave rationally?
Yeah. A lot of it has to do with the fight or flight response. There's a part of our brain called the limbic system that really controls most of our emotions. It's where our emotions kind of come from. And there's a part of that called the amygdala. And I kind of think of the amygdala as this little walnut-sized part in the brain that's part of our old primitive brain, they call it, that even lower animals have. And it's that part that's really designed to keep us alive, right? It's where the limbic system is where heart rate and breathing and the fight or flight, those automatic things that just are necessary for survival. So this amygdala is kind of like sort of the watchdog in a way, right? It's always kind of scanning and the environment and looking for potential threats. And if it sees something, it will automatically just shoot out some adrenaline and cortisol and some other hormones that kick that fight or flight response in, get your heart beating fast, get your blood pressure up, get your muscles tense, all that, because the goal at that point is just to either fight off this threat or to flee from it, right? The flight part.
Yeah.
But when you're in that state, again, like I said, it's all survival. So the front part of our brains, the frontal cortex, is where reasoning, rational thought, problem solving, all that stuff is. That kind of goes offline when you're in that moment. So when you're in the middle of a fight or an argument with somebody, that part is often not working very well if you've let the they call it physiological arousal, if you've let that get to a certain point. So we talk about ways of helping with that, because while that fight or flight response is a part that's hardwired into our brains and built in, and a good thing when used properly, we also have a relaxation response that's hardwired and built in. And that's the part that kicks in when the threat has passed, and it releases other chemicals that kind of slows your body back down. And that kind of happens naturally, when you've removed yourself or whatever from the situation.
Sure.
But there are also things you can do in the moment that can help to kind of kick that in. And those are simple things, just like taking a breath,
Yeah.
or, let yourself relax a little bit, that kind
Yeah.
of thing.
Yeah. So it really is about being mindful. I mean, it comes back to that. Like, so if you notice it, like, oh shit, I'm starting to get pissed. All right, let me take a breath. Because so there is a sort of a threshold, right? It sounds like you get to a certain point where you're not going to be able to even think about taking a breath because you're too far gone, so to speak, right?
Right. Yeah. We talk about thinking about your anger like on a 0 to 10, 0, I'm good, I'm laid back, everything's well with the world, right? 10, I could strangle somebody, I could kill somebody, if you, so being aware of where you are is one of the things that guys sometimes need to do, because sometimes guys miss what it feels like when I'm at a 3 or when I'm at a 4. All I know is I was here and now I'm here, right? So if they can clue in more to what their body feels like, or what kind of things are going through their mind when they're hitting that 4 or 5, because if you let it get much over that, like you said, you're not going to want to calm down, because you're going to want to hear what I got to say now, right? You're mad and you're not going to want to walk away at that point. So you got to keep it, maybe at that 4 or 5 before you start to do things to calm yourself. And sometimes you can do that and you can stay in the conversation, but sometimes it's just too much. And that's when the timeout comes in, and you need to just walk away and come back later.
I think there's for me, there's comfort in understanding, or at least understanding it at my ability level, that it really is a biological, physiological response. Like, there's things happening that are causing these things. And if you can understand that and learn how to sort of embrace it, because I say this all the time, I know it sounds woo woo, but like, listening to your body is so really important. Like, I can tell you now when I'm stressed before I even really realize it, based on the tightness in the back of my neck, those muscles, if they're getting tense. I at this point, I've gotten really good at like noticing that before I'm realizing, oh shit, I'm stressed. There's so much, I think, to be gained from really learning how to listen to your body. But it sounds so like mamby-pamby or whatever. Like, that's not manly. What do you mean, listen to your body? Fuck that, or whatever. You know what I mean? But I think it's vital.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. One of the 10 sessions focuses on this, ways to, we talk about the fight or flight, we talk about ways to relax. So we'll talk about breathing and mindfulness, and some of the guys are interested, but
sure.
A lot of them you can kind of see glaze over, and it's silly, so sometimes the way I approach this is, and I think it's true, there's a lot of overlap between anger management and stress management. A lot of the same things that you do to help your stress, you work to help with your anger too. And we all have stress, right? And guys can relate to that, certainly, right? And wouldn't it be nice to have ways that you can be less stressful if you have a job interview you got to go to, or if you got to go to the dentist, or the boss calls you into his office? Wouldn't it be nice to be able to bring yourself down to a 3 or a 4? And so sometimes that'll motivate people to at least try. But that's really one of those things too that you have to practice. Like anything, the more you do it, the better you get at it. And it's really, in many ways, sort of rewiring some of that not transmitters, but the wiring in your brain is shifting. And so with mindfulness, or with other kinds of meditation, you can do scans and stuff, and you can see what it's doing, right? It's not just somebody's imagination. There's definitely changes that are going on in the brain, which is kind of cool to think that you can behave in a certain way or practice something in a certain way, and it changes the wiring and the structure in your brain. It's
Yeah,
kind
that,
of
I mean, it's fascinating to me, and that's why I don't, I understand the the sort of the view that it's sort of like mamby-pamby, woo-woo, weird, whatever. But I think it's fascinating to understand, like, these things are all just like things that your body, your brain, your body, they're doing, and they can be altered if you just sort of have an open mind about that and understanding it as best you can, and just realizing that we're all just sort of you know experiencing some of the same kind of things, and if we can just be mindful of where we're at, we can change it, and in a way that's like, it's hard for me to explain because I'm not a scientist or a psychologist or anything of that nature, but there's something about that understanding how it works and knowing that I can change it, and that it's a physical biological response. I think that's just, to me, it's fascinating.
Yeah, and I think another important part of that too, if guys can come to understand that, is it gives them an explanation for why I'm acting the way I'm
Yes.
acting. And it doesn't mean I'm an asshole or I'm just a bad person or
Yes.
I'm a lousy dad or a lousy husband. There's something going on here that's contributing to that, and I can change that. So it sort of takes the shame part away, the
Yes.
guilt part away.
Yes. 100%. You mentioned meditation. Is that something that you recommend to the guys that go through your program too?
It's one of the things that we talk about. Yep, it's one of the ways of sort of relaxing that we talk about in that session that I mentioned
Yep.
earlier, where we talk about um, calming yourself. You, it's important. You really need to be able to, if you're going to be able to practice any of the other techniques and strategies that we talk about.
Yeah.
You can't do that if you're at an 8.
Yeah.
It just doesn't work. So you got to
Yeah.
get good at being able to sort of regulate that anger and keep it at a certain level so that your frontal lobe, that frontal
Yeah.
cortex is online enough um, that you can think to do
Yeah.
something else and then actually be able to do it.
Yeah.
So yeah, mindfulness is meditation. Uh, it, Meditation, yeah, I mean, most people think back to the 60s,
Right.
with
Right.
home or whatever, they
Right.
get that,
Right.
but it's really not what it is. So as long as somebody's open and they're just kind of learning about what it actually is, and that it's not just, some monk up on a mountain somewhere,
Right.
but it's something that you can do driving your car or
Yeah.
sitting in your living room or wherever, you
Yeah.
can.
Yeah. What are your recommendations around that? Like, is a couple times a day, once a day, 10 minutes, 20 minutes? Like, what do you typically sort of recommend?
Whatever somebody's able to do,
Yeah.
really. Some people do better. I will usually direct them to an app. There's so many different apps, and
Yeah.
everybody's got a smartphone, and that's just a convenient way of being able to do it. Most people do better when there's somebody kind of guiding you through it, right?
Sure.
You got some guy talking to you.
Yeah.
Um, Not everybody, though. There's other ways that you can meditate without that assistance, but the great majority of people, I think, like that.
Yeah.
Um, so if you're somebody who can carve out 10 minutes every day or 20 minutes every day, and you can do that on a regular basis, good, right? Some people won't do that though. So for those people, I'll say, do you have a minute,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
2 minutes that
Yeah.
you can maybe do 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 times a day,
Yeah.
even that's going to help.
Yeah. Well, David, I want to thank you, man. I appreciate you doing this. This is exactly what I'd hoped it would be. It's right up my alley in terms of the things that were discussed and how to deal with it. It's practical stuff. It's stuff that can be applied if guys really put the work in. So I want to thank you, and I'm going to wrap up with the final question that I ask everybody. What are some words of wisdom you would impart to a man who is just beginning his divorce process?
Um, I would say don't ignore your anger. Don't ignore any of your feelings, but don't ignore your anger. Guys tend to try to drink them away or drug them away or throw themselves into their work and work them away, or they'll dive into a new relationship too quickly and try to, avoid their feelings that way. None of that is going to work long term. You have to be able to deal with it and work through it. And, what that exactly looks like will probably be a little bit different for everybody. But if you don't, you risk carrying that forward into future relationships or even carrying it along with you as you deal with the ex, so letting go of that anger and just coming to terms with some things won't happen if you ignore it.
Yeah, very true.
It's fixable.
Yeah, very true.
Can't change.
Yeah. Well, thank you, sir. I really, really appreciate you doing this. Actually, one thing did pop in. Do you do this online? Your anger session? Are you able, or guys from I have listeners from all over the world, thankfully, are they able to join in one of your groups?
I don't know about the all over the world part. Certainly anybody in Pennsylvania.
Oh, that's right, because
I'm licensed in Pennsylvania. So I think I'd have to double check the rules. I think technically I can only see people in Pennsylvania.
Yeah. Okay. And how do people reach you? What's the best way to contact you about this if they're interested?
Most people find me through my Psychology Today profile. If you get onto Psychology Today, and you'll find me through there. If you just search online anger management York, PA, I usually come up near the top through that Psychology Today profile. So that's probably best.
Awesome. Again, thank you, David. I really appreciate this.
Sure thing.
All right. Take care.
All right.
Bye. Bye. Thank you so much for watching and or listening. Thank you to Nick Coyle and Lifer for allowing me to use their song, Born Again, which you're hearing now and at the intro to the podcast. Thank you to Justin Delahanty and all of my brothers at the Alpha Code. Please visit the website, risingphoenixpodcast.com, to connect with me and other like-minded men who are looking to thrive and grow after their divorce. And remember to surround yourself with people who add value to your life, who challenge you to be greater than you were yesterday, who sprinkle magic into your existence like you do to theirs. Life is not to be done alone. Find your tribe.